Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted, the live call-in show where we talk to people every week about what they believe and why. Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. I am your host today, Objectively Dan, and joining me today is Nate Smith. Nate Smith, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me so much, Dan. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes. Nate, you were supposed to be on here about a month ago, and then the aliens attacked and didn't want you to be on this show. We had some technical difficulties, and it was the night we were going to talk about that alien news stuff. And we didn't end up doing it. But now you're here. So welcome back, Nate. Appreciate you being on.
Thank you. I had incontrovertible proof of of life from other planets visiting us, killing our cattle, probing our orifices, and Big Pharma shut us down.
Right. Pharma. Pharma, surprisingly enough, was the culprit this time. But we'll get him next time. Nate, you are a volunteer of the atheist community of Austin, just like I am. And also, you are a current host of Secular Sexuality, which is another show that we do here on the show. So you are joining me today on Truth Wanted. We do a little crossover stuff today. And we just want to talk about your story, Nate. We want to talk about how you came to where you are today. You actually grew up as a Christian before you took on the label of atheist for yourself. So let's get started. How did you grow up and where did it all come from?
Yes, I did start off as a Christian until I was kind of old enough to know better, I suppose. But I've heard you say that you don't how did people become atheists in the 80s and then the 90s? Before there was no internet.
It's shocking to me. It's shocking to me for sure, because I live in an area of the world of the Bible Belt where you just really can't, even today, much more so when I was a kid, but even today, it's still very taboo to talk about. So it's just hard for me to imagine even finding a sense of community if you don't do that through the internet. So,
yeah, well, the sense of community was certainly lacking. And I don't know that I would have labeled myself an atheist until probably about 1996. And we'll get there. But I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know the title. I was my family's super religious. So just being completely surrounded by those people and losing my faith at a pretty early age was pretty lonely. Pretty lonely experience. But so my family, super religious, Pentecostals. So the speaking in tongues, the slayed in the spirit, all that wacky stuff. And I was a big reader when I was a kid. One of the things my mother really did for me was encourage literacy and reading. So read the Bible, read the Bible completely all the way through, probably around 8 or 9.
Okay.
Maybe.
That's pretty young to read it all the way through. Do you think you really understood everything at 9, reading it all the way through? Because I don't know if I would have.
I don't know that I understood everything, but I do remember approaching my mother with questions like, I thought you said witches weren't real. Well, they're not. Right. I'm like, okay, well, it says here that we should kill witches.
Right.
Were witches around then and now they're not?
Right.
Well, no, there's no real magic now. I'm like, okay, but you said witches get their power from demons. So are there still demons, or are demons not around still too?
Yeah.
Go to your room, Nate. Go to your room.
Right.
So I don't know that I really understood it, but there were so many parts that I remember, even being 8, 9 years old, that just were in such stark contrast from the values that the church was claiming to espouse,
Yeah.
Another one that really stuck out to me was the story of Abraham and Isaac, and Isaac being taken up to be sacrificed to God, and then at the last minute he's like, "Just kidding, believe in Jesus."
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you bring up this point too, where if you grew up around evangelicalism, which I did, I grew up around it. I don't know if my family was particularly evangelical, but it was definitely a part of the culture around me. Like there is this idea that, oh, you're supposed to spread the message to everybody and you're supposed to tell people about this thing. But as soon as you ask like really hard questions, suddenly you're kind of punished for it. Like there's weird consequences for asking like the wrong kinds of questions, which doesn't really make sense if the whole point is like, well, we're supposed to explain this religion to people. Like, why is there like a taboo there? It's very weird, very strange.
It's so weird. And I got that for years. For years. I went because again, my family is super religious, church 3-4 times a week. You've got Sunday school, Bible study, choir practice, all this stuff. Right. And then when I finally read it, and I start asking questions, and then all of a sudden I'm in trouble for it. It's like, well, what do you want? Like, you wanted me to read your book, and I read your book, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So, to be vilified for that is very confusing for a child.
Yeah,
and definitely. Especially in a really religious community, to go from being everyone's favorite to being kicked out of Sunday school, and being sat down in the pastor's office. And, asking these questions, it's like, well, if God's all good, how did he create something evil? And why would he create something evil? And if he knew that he was going to turn against him, why would he create him in the first place?
Yeah. That's another aspect of it too. If I today, if I had a child and if there was a pastor in any community space, whether I was going to that church or not, I don't know why I'd be going to that church, but let's say there was a pastor somewhere in the community that which I was a part of, and they thought that they had the authority to tell my kid anything, I would just say absolutely not. Like, maybe if they have like a degree in religious scholarship or something, they could maybe tell them a thing or two. But like a pastor doing anything to my child, whether it's disciplining them or just like thinking that they have some sort of hierarchical place above them outside of just, being an adult and them being a kid, like it's really crazy to me now. Like it's so weird that when I was a kid, pastors were such a different sort of person to me. Now I just see them as, I don't know, somebody that runs a church, but like that's it. I just see it as more like a career, not like as anything super spiritually special. But like I feel like in evangelical spaces there is kind of a mystique there a little bit around your pastors. They're supposed to be like the leaders of the flock,
yeah. It's like being sent to the principal's office, right?
Right.
You're supposed to feel this sense of dread because, oh, well, now you've asked the serious questions and now you're making the other kids think for themselves. So we're going to send you to the dungeon master.
Yeah.
Better look out.
Yeah, that's so true. I just want to quickly interrupt, Nick, because we have open lines right now. And folks, we want to get to your calls tonight. So please call into the show. If you've thought about calling for a while, tonight's a good night to call in. We have open lines and we want to talk to you tonight. So we'll be taking your calls in just a second. So get on the line now. But yeah, Nate, so tell me, you're growing up in this church environment. You're kind of getting in trouble at church. What's next for little Nate's life?
Little Nate was very hungry for the truth, which is
the truth was wanted.
Yes, maybe that's why I ended up on this show, right?
That's it. You did it. You made your aspirations become a reality. So happy for you. This is it.
Way to go, 8-year-old Nate. You got there. You've arrived.
You did it. This is peak. You're peaking right now.
Oh yeah.
So good. So good.
No, I had like these little tests I would do, and I would like balance a pencil on the end of a table just so that it was almost at the point where it would fall. And I would sit there and I would pray for God to knock it over because I wanted to know if it was real. I knew something was up, and I'm like, I want to see a sign. Give me a sign. Show me that you're there, because the Sunday school teachers, the pastors, my mother, nobody really wants to actually take me seriously. No one wants to actually have an honest conversation. And like, again, I was a big reader when I was a kid. So like for me to actually read this book that was so central to our lives, have it not make sense, like have the narrative not make sense, and then ask honest questions. And all of a sudden I'm shut down. I'm like, well, now I want to actually know, is this for real or not? So I would set up a little pencil, and then if that didn't work, I would try to move it with the power of my mind, and I would stare at that pencil, and I'd be like,
Right.
And it never went. And sometimes I'd leave the room and then I'd pray again, see if that worked. And spoiler alert, it didn't work. The pencil didn't move.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me point this out too, because, and maybe somebody would call in to complain about this, because there are Christians that will say, well, that's not how it works. That's not how it's supposed to work. That's not how prayer is supposed to be a thing. But if you're supposed to, like, faith of a mustard seed, right? Like, faith of a mustard seed means like anything can happen. If Jesus could like multiply fish and bread out of nowhere, that's not any crazier than trying to make a pencil move with your mind.
No.
And if you read the Acts of the Apostles, right, like they are continuing that tradition of like doing miracles and stuff for people. So like Christians are supposed to be able to do stuff. And in the Pentecostal environment too, like that's supposed to be a thing that happens every Sunday. You're supposed to be seeing all kinds of stuff. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so like and this idea that you can't just test it like that. Well, it's like, well, why not? Like that's kind of part of the point, isn't it, to be able to do that kind of stuff? But anyway, it obviously does make sense.
Well, yeah, and there's a passage in there about being shown and being asking the Spirit of God to come into you, and it almost certainly will. And while I mean, if God's this powerful creature and he can't move a fucking pencil, well, this ain't looking so good for your whole system here.
Yeah, for sure. So you're kind of growing up now. You're having these doubts. So how did you move? What was the label shifter for you?
I had an event that really changed my life when I was about maybe 12 years old. I don't remember exactly how old I was, 12, 13. But like my parents in the church were kind of in damage control mode at this point. So I was sent to a youth retreat against my will, a Pentecostal youth retreat. And all the kids were lined up around the outside of the room, and we were all going to be slayed in the spirit. Now, do you know what being slayed in the spirit is?
I know what being slayed in the spirit is, but you should explain to the audience, especially those who don't know about Pentecostal traditions, what that is.
I will explain what being slayed in the spirit is. It is the moment that you become filled with the Holy Spirit. Right?
Not a euphemism. Not a euphemism.
Overcome. No, this isn't Thursday. This is Friday.
This isn't Thursday. This isn't secular sexuality. This is Truth Wanted. So
different show. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So in a completely platonic manner, the pastor comes around and he gives you a little pop on the head. It's kind of like those little trust exercises where you fall back and everyone catches you.
Right.
And after a particularly moving service and a call to the altar, and now we're going to do this, we're going to line you all, and you're sort of going to be inaugurated. You're going to come into your own as a full member of the church, because now you're old enough to feel the power of the Holy Spirit. And so they're going around the room, and I was honestly really excited, Dan. I was like, finally, like this is the moment where like I'm gonna know, because I'm watching him bop these kids on the head, and they're like, "Oh, I come over with a case of the vapors. I can't stand up no more." And they're all falling down. And these are like, these kids are my friends, so I wouldn't think that they're all just faking it. That can't be what's happening. They're being slayed in the spirit. And he goes around, and bop, 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 and he's coming up to me, and my heart's going a mile a minute, and I'm like, this is it. This is finally it. And he bops me on the forehead, and I'm like,
nothing happened.
Is something supposed to happen?
Right.
And he said some words, something else to sort of meant to hype me up, make me play along, and he bops me on the head again, and I'm like, and it dawned on me. I don't know if maybe like the bop on the head was what finally jarred my brain into being like, you're all playing along. You're all just making this up. None of this is real.
Right.
This is all crap.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah, it's weird. I think like I knew some Pentecostals growing up, and I remember having this conversation in college with somebody about Pentecostalism and their sort of evidences towards, you know, this whole thing being real. And somebody made this argument to me that, well, it just doesn't make sense. Like, how could all of these people be faking this every week, right? If this was a thing. But I think we have to be careful when we say that they're faking it, because I don't, it's not faking it in the same sense that somebody is deliberately trying to scam somebody or put a falsehood in somebody's mind that something is happening when it actually isn't. I think for most Pentecostals who have that experience, they are primed to react and respond in an environment that they are, a lot of them trained since birth to do. Just from like it's like a monkey see, monkey do kind of thing.
Yeah,
like I don't think it. Yeah, it's I don't think it's a bunch of people who have all like coalesced together and are like, all right, like, we're gonna do this thing together on 3, 1, 2, 3, and then like go out and play these roles. I think it's just an excitement from being in a crowd of people and seeing a bunch of other people have these experiences, and then it just kind of gets people caught in the moment there. Which is it's a weird thing for people. I've noticed this when I've talked to people outside of the US who don't see a lot of Pentecostals who really don't understand it. I think that's the best way I can explain it to people from my understanding of it. But I didn't grow up Pentecostal, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's peer pressure.
Yeah.
It's it's the urge to perform.
Right.
It's you want to please. Like glossolalia is a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not something that they're deliberately doing to deceive everybody else. They really believe that they're speaking in tongues.
Right.
And I guess in a certain way of looking at it, they are. They are speaking, and they are speaking with their tongue. It's just they're not being motivated by a third of God. It's
right.
just it's just pressure to perform, and you want to fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it. So you had this experience, you didn't fall down. What happened next? Did people just like look at you funny, or what happened?
Oh, it got a lot worse for me over the next couple of years, because my family was still religious. They still wanted me to go to youth group, and I started skipping out. Didn't want to go. I would literally sit outside the church because I wasn't allowed to come home until the youth group was over. So I would sit across from the church, just like, I'm not going to do it. You can't drag me in there. Those people don't like me. I don't like them. You're all lying to me. There was one man, one church leader, who's actually, his son is still a really good friend of mine. And he's still a church leader. He's actually a youth pastor now. But his father was the one person in that entire community that actually tried to sit me down and have a theological discussion with a 12-year-old or 10-year-old. And I remember those sessions in his basement. The man's name is Gary Kivel. He passed away a couple of years ago. But the impact that man had on my life was huge, because he was the one person that actually was willing to tackle these issues, even though, he didn't succeed and he was incorrect. It kind of gave me a hint that, well, maybe not everybody's just going to kick me out of their in-group because I'm asking questions or because I don't believe the same thing they do. So that was a little bit of a, sort of ameliorated the damage, I guess. That's good. I ended up like, I would spend, at this point I had big schism with my family. Like I would get kicked out for the day. I wouldn't be allowed back. I'd go to the public library and I would just sit there and read books until the sun went down and come back. And one day I came across a book on intelligent design. So,
okay.
Yeah. So this was, I actually still have the book. If I can find it here, maybe now's not the best time.
Maybe not. Maybe a different time.
I have the book. It's called Darwin's Black Box by Michael Behe. And you probably know about this. He was the guy that got called into the court case, right, to defend having creationism in school. And again, it was kind of like another one of those moments for me where I'm like, well, maybe this has something to it. Maybe it's just a lot more complex than we understand, right? And maybe the answers just aren't found in this book from, 2,500 years ago. Maybe we just didn't figure it out yet, and it took the science to figure it out. And then we come to that roadblock where it's like, here you shall go and no further. And so I read the book, and I found it pretty convincing. Right, because it is a fairly convincing series of examples of how difficult it would be for certain biological functions to evolve.
I think if you don't give a comprehensive understanding of intelligent design arguments, if you don't recognize the flaws there, I think to the average person, I think they're probably one of the more convincing kinds of arguments you can give for apologetics. Yeah, I'm not saying that they're good necessarily arguments, right? But like, if you don't study philosophy, if you don't study science, if you're just hearing these for the first time, I think that on a whole, they're probably one of the more convincing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Like the irreducible complexity and the mousetrap analogy is really, it's a really powerful example. And so I was like, wow, maybe there's something to this. And I thought, what if there's a rebuttal? I want to hear like someone who doesn't agree with this person. And at that point, I came across Richard Dawkins, who I'm sorry he's turned out to be a bit of a douche lately, but
yeah, no kidding.
But I came across Richard Dawkins' book, The Blind Watchmaker, and I'm like, oh, okay. So there is a good reason, there is an explanation for this. You just weren't creative enough or smart enough or honest enough to present it. And then from then on, I was into, Christopher Hitchens and Dan Dennett and all these atheist writers. And I'm just like, it was like the world opened up. And I'm like, there are people who don't believe either. And they've written books and their arguments actually make sense.
Yeah, it is kind of weird for me to have this discovery too, in the sense like, oh, there's all kinds of people who have written against all this stuff that I've heard my entire life, and I didn't know these books were out there, because if the people I knew about them, then they wouldn't believe in the same stuff either, probably. As far as myself, like I think I subscribed to a special creation view of mankind. I thought mankind was created by God, but like evolution could still also work simultaneously. I don't know how that actually worked. If you probe me, I don't know if I could give you a great answer, but that was kind of the schema I was working with. But I find that tends to be a common thing with a lot of Christians. They either fully reject it or they kind of put evolution somehow in a way that still makes sense as a Christian, even though now I don't think it really makes sense at all. But that's interesting. That's interesting. You kind of had a deep dive in the literature there and realized that everything kind of didn't make sense at the end of the day, huh?
It was such a liberating moment for me, that week where I was reading The Blind Watchmaker. And this was like, I think The Blind Watchmaker was published in the late 80s. So this was like 10 years before Behe even wrote his book. And there was already a rebuttal out there. So had he done some honest research, he could have found it, because I found it and I was 16 years old, So
there you go. If you want to become an atheist and you don't have the internet, you just go to your library. I guess that's what we're learning here, at least from your story. But that's good. That's good. I'm glad that you're here talking to us today, Nate. And I'm glad that we're going to be able to talk to some other people about their stories too. So we want to get to your calls now. But first, before we do that, we should shout out the patron of the week, because every single week I give a special shout out to someone who donates on patreon.com/truthwanted. All the money that goes on that Patreon goes towards the atheist community of Austin, and this show specifically. It helps get new equipment and do all kinds of fun stuff for this show. So thank you to everybody that donates on Patreon. But I want to give a special shout out this week, and this week's special shout out goes to Gage. Thank you, Gage, for donating, and thank you to everyone else who also donates on Patreon. You guys are awesome. So that is our Patron announcement. And now I think we should get to some calls. Nate, you ready to talk to some people?
I was born ready to talk to people, Dan. Let's do this.
I love it. We got a couple different people who want to talk to us. First, I want to talk to Mark, who is calling in from Oregon. Mark, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi, Dan. Hi, Nate. This is Mark. I just wanted to chime in when I started hearing about being slain in the spirit and all the full gospel kind of stuff that I grew up with. My great-grandmother was part of the Azusa Mission revival of Pentecostalism in the turn of the first part of the 20th century, and he spoke at places like Angeles Temple and stuff like that. Anyway, and then my parents grew up in a Pentecostal church, and so did I. And but the amazing thing about it was I went through all that kind of stuff and realized pretty early on that it was all pretty much phony. I mean, I was slain in the spirit a few times, but that was after a hyped kind of emotional experience in the church, and then they came by and you got the tingle and you went down, and that's kind of all it was. And you know, so I know exactly what that's like. I was attending places like Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, when it first the big building, the big church was built in the 70s. Jesus, 1975. I knew Paul and Jan Crouch, and would go to their studios when they were really small. I was in love with Paul Jr., but that is, you know, it's just amazing how all that phoniness. But you know what? People really believe it.
Yeah.
And they
of course they do.
In their heart of hearts, they believe it. And they're not so much faking it as they're just caught up in the moment.
Here's a funny thing, because if I grew up in a Methodist church and a Baptist church. I went to two different churches for a majority of my life. And in the Baptist church, and I find this to be true with a lot of Baptists, they look down on Pentecostals. They look down on all the other denominations, but they look down on Pentecostals. Okay. And it's because they see the slaying in the spirit stuff, and they're like, well, that's just crazy. That's just nonsense.
Right.
Meanwhile, if you are a Baptist and you believe that baptism is a special ceremony in which the Holy Spirit literally enters your body, or you believe, even if you don't believe that far, you believe that there is some magical thing that's happening when you're dunking somebody in that water and they become born again in Christ. Like, how is that really any different from somebody going up and just, saying a bunch of stuff with their mouths? Like it's the same level of belief in magic there to some degree, right? Same level of belief of something spiritual happening. It's just a different, different way of displaying that, I guess. And it didn't make sense to me as a Baptist either, by the way, or being in the Baptist church, because this idea of when you get baptized, your whole life is supposed to change and you're supposed to be born again and everything's supposed to be different. But the people I knew that got baptized, they were like extra holy for a week and then would just go back to sinning or doing whatever they were doing like the week after. Like, that was pretty much the story for everybody, So it didn't seem like that was working either.
I went to a college called Biola, the Bible Institute.
Oh, yeah.
I was there for 1 1/3 of the semester. And being a gay young man in a freshman dorm with a lot of young men, I was having a lot of gay sex with a lot of these guys.
Hell yeah, Mark. Hell yeah.
I was a bad boy. I was a very bad boy because I was just I was a 17-year-old when I first entered college. So I was, just in the prime of my life and living life large. And so the Dean of Men brought me in after it was found that I was gay and said, first question he asked me, and I'll never forget this: how long have you wanted to be a woman?
What? Whoa, that's a bit of a jump there. Yeah.
This is the Dean of Men. And I had never thought even once about being a woman, but, it shows you how ignorant they are about the world at large. So,
yeah. And also, man, that's so funny that at Biola, of all places, you were having those experiences. And it sounds like you definitely weren't the only one having those experiences there. So.
Oh no, it was a rampant thing. And in the Spoon newspaper of the year, and that was 1978, as long before either of your time to date or Dan, There was the school newspaper came out the month after, and I didn't read it. I was just told this by a friend that still was at the college. And it was basically, have you heard about the scandal at Biola? And I guess that was me.
That gay people exist at Biola. The horror. The absolute horror. Put it in the newspaper. This is crazy. Yeah, that's...
Step right up here. 5 cents. The latest scandal.
Oh, my gosh.
It was pretty amazing. But you know what's amazing is the Dina man also wanted names. He said, I want to know who you've been with. And of course, I wasn't telling anybody. And yeah,
it sounds like maybe he was, kind of maybe
saying he was looking around,
open for some connections. The grinder of the day.
Yeah,
I love it when we're cruising together.
Well, Mark, thank you for sharing that story, because again, we were just talking. It's a common theme that comes up on the show. I always say, like, I'm crazy that people are atheists before the internet, and that experience being gay before the internet. That is also like huge respect to you, sir, and for like living your life and doing it anyway, and facing consequences for that. I mean, gosh, I respect you a lot, Mark. That thanks for sharing that too. And that's, I mean, of course, that's going to happen at Biola of all places, right? I wonder how much of that is still happening today. I mean, it's got to be, right?
Great. They've got a gay student union now at Biola.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well,
they've come a long way, baby.
I guess so. But
my experiences were pretty profound in that time. But it was the 70s, man. It was, a happy time for me. Although I did get kicked out of my parents kicked me out of the house, of course.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about that.
I went on my journey into San Francisco, which is where all good gay kids go when they leave their home. And
Mark, did you put flowers in your hair when you went to San Francisco?
No, because I was a gay man and I didn't want flowers in my hair. But I had leather pants back in the day.
Hey.
That's awesome.
I had a leather jacket eventually, but yeah, I walked the streets of San Francisco, Polk Street, and then Santa Monica, in West Hollywood, and then I went to Waikiki when I got too old to hustle anymore, and I needed to vacation. So
gotcha.
Went from Jesus freak to hustler. So that's.
Yeah, it's like I never I never want to say, because there's that stereotype of people who are in the pastor position or the super Christian position, and there's like the stereotype of they're like, the reason why they're so caught up on other people's sexual lives is because they're gay themselves, right? Like I don't want to assume anybody's sexuality. But there's all these stories like the ones you're telling me, Mark, and you're not the first person that's told me that they went to a Christian place or a Christian school or Christian whatever, and there's this secret underground meeting of gay people, just doing that. So it's coming from somewhere, these stories. And again, I will never make that assumption blindly, but I do wonder how many people go that route of religiosity because they are struggling with their internal sense of identity. I mean, it's obviously a thing. Like people have talked about
all the time. As a matter of fact, one of the guys that started Exodus International was named Mike Bussey, and for a short time, I tried to get ungay.
Really?
To get back to my family, and I met Mike Bussey, and he did an interview with me. And Mike Bussey.
Did you just say Bussey? I'm sorry, Mark. Did you just say Mike Bussey?
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Wow. As a fellow gay man, I get that joke, and I hope that some of our audience does as well. I'm sorry. Continue, please. Continue.
So that was his name. Anyway, he came out as he was a gay man that has gotten better, in quotes, and was trying to help other gay teenagers, interestingly enough, to get out of the gay life. And so I met him, I interviewed with him, and I said I didn't really want anything to do with his whole Exodus International, but he came out as a gay man with a lover years later, And then I also, for a short time, stayed at a place in San Rafael called Love in Action, which was for kids that were in the street in San Francisco. And basically, I did what I did at Viola, which was have sex with all the kids, and they kicked me out there too. I was a sexual dynamite boy in the day, not anymore, but I got into a lot of trouble. So,
man. Well,
it was a
you'll find no slut shaming here, Mark. Get it?
No slut shaming here. I was gonna make a joke because like that's exactly what they would say about gay people, right? That they're so sexually deviant and they just want to sexually sin all the time, you know. But obviously,
well, there's a lot of repression. I was a street kid, so when you don't have any money and you're living on the street and you're a gay man, a gay kid, basically, I was a sex worker, basically. So, eventually I became an insurance agent. So, the next time you see your insurance agent, you might want to wonder where their past might have led them. But, things change and people grow up. And when you're not a teenager and you need to make money in other ways, things change. So,
yeah.
But Pentecostal beginning, the hustler to insurance agent. Go big.
There you go. That's quite a journey, Mark. Well, I'm glad, the world is obviously definitely not fucking perfect. Holy shit. But at least I'm so glad that we could even have a conversation like this, on a call-in show that just like couldn't happen so many years ago now. I'm glad to see that at least some of that progress has been made. And I'm glad that I've changed my mind on this stuff too. Obviously, I grew up, I've talked about this before, in a homophobic environment. I definitely had homophobia like in me as well and in my thoughts about other people. But even like the Christian friends that I know have really changed on that in the past few years. So we'll see. I mean, there's going to be continuing survey data about how people feel that way in the United States. But it seems to be people are more accepting now and more understanding, as a whole, which is good. And I just hope that trend continues, Mark, so that other people don't have to go to sex work to feel like that's how they have to make their living. Because I don't want that to be.
Also, it's important for us all to if we can, to be out and proud.
Yeah.
And not to. And I've been out since 1978, and so and I was living that gay life before that too. But I was out like 1978 and was able to meet people like Harvey Milk and people like that.
Right.
And you met Harvey Milk?
They were the Harvey Milk. Yeah, I was in Polk Street. He was at the Castro camera shop during that time. So
wow.
What?
Oh, that's awesome.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, there were people that went well before me at Stonewall and stuff that came out and. And that were out and proud. And Harvey was one of those people. Now, I didn't really know who Harvey was because I was a teenager and I really didn't care a lot about politics. So, but his camera shop was open and a lot of us would hang out. When we were in the Castro, would hang out at the camera shop. I stayed at Polk Street pretty much because I was a teenager, and that's kind of the crew that I went with. And there was Folsom, of course, which was where I stayed away from if I could help it because I was scared of it as a young person. But Harvey Milk was an interesting man.
That's
movie Milk. Sean Penn I thought did a really good job.
He was so good. You haven't seen it, Dan?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh my Lanta.
I've wanted to see it for a while, ever since I saw it came out. It's on Netflix still, right? Anyway, I'll have to check that out later. But Mark, I don't even
know you anymore, Dan. I don't even know you.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if I can go on with this show now.
I'm just.
I'm going to chat up here, and I'll listen to the rest of the show. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
Sounds good, Mark. Thanks for calling. I keep saying this, but like, I'm just so happy that again we can talk about this stuff like that again. And Mark brings up a great point too about being out too, right? Because I know straight people in my life who don't understand, like, well, why do they have to make a parade about it? Why do they have to have a whole month about it? Talk about LGBT, pride and stuff, right? It's because there wasn't a mode of expression for people for so long, and it's still such a recent and new thing. And even though the times are changing and people are becoming more accepting overall, at least in the United States, there's still people coming out and still people trying to figure that out and reconcile that. And so,
and there's still gay kids that are killing themselves because of peer pressure. There's still trans people being beaten to death in the streets just
absolutely.
for being trans, right? It is still an issue of visibility. Things have got better.
Right.
And like Mark was saying, we have made progress relatively quickly. And one thing I like to bring it back to too is if you think about it, as recently as 1967, it was illegal for interracial couples were illegal.
Right.
And look at us now, to think back to 1967 to now, what is it? 50, 60 years?
Yeah.
In 60 years. Nobody would ever suggest that's wrong now, because we've come so
you say
far.
that you say that, but Twitter,
nobody decent
on the internet and 4chan would say. Remember, they pulled that that Cheerios commercials it wasn't even a decade ago, I don't think, because there was an interracial couple on it. And there was I don't know, people are still freaking racist in this country.
Well, I'm Canadian, so we've got it a little better, but we've got our own set of problems now with the residential schools, and we're not even going to get into that. I wanted to touch on something that Mark said, though. About the tingly feeling that you get, right? That's not made up. These people aren't just imagining that. There's a word for that. There's a phrase for that. ASMR. I had to look it up because I'm not that smart. Autonomous sensory meridian response. That tingly feeling that you get when you hear that song that you love, or when you're surrounded by a group of your friends, right? That is a real thing. That is a physiological response. That's not the Holy Spirit. That's just a part of the human body. So they're not just faking it. It is genuine.
Yeah.
What they attribute that to, well, that's completely different entirely.
Right. Yeah. There's a difference in origins there, right? Well, we got some other callers that want to talk to us, but before we do, Nate, we need to roll a quick little promo for the ACA. So check this out.
And try to have some fun and sort it out with towels when you're all done.
It's always a good idea to bring a towel.
Always bring a towel.
Why, hello, Dan. Nice to see you. Hi, Derek. Thanks for being on the show. Yes, it's really great to be here. Oh, yeah, I'm really glad you're here, Derek.
June 2020, the Prince of Wales and the head
of...
of...
that's the right year, Malty?
That was,
okay.
Yes, yeah. Don't break Malty.
I'll tell you what. If you can demonstrate to us that the proposition Jesus loves you is true, I'll say it all day long. Easy as that.
You're on with me and Seth.
Oh, you said Seth?
Yeah, Seth Andrews.
Okay, I don't think I know him, but I just want to make sure I got his name correct.
Feels bad, man.
Feels bad.
Rip
feels
Seth.
bad. Oh, yeah, I know. It's that they did my man Seth like that, and they shouldn't have done that. I'm glad. I just noticed you and I are both in that promo together this week.
Yes, we are.
So isn't that
yes,
fun?
we are. And hey, if we run out of calls, can you do your little sock puppet chemtrail guy? Or pretend to be like a 9/11 truther or something? Yeah. You're like, oh, it was all a government plot.
That's what happens when we can't connect to our host at the very beginning of the show, and I have to improvise right then and there. You get little impromptu puppet shows from me, so that's really great. But anyway, we should get back to our callers here who have been waiting patiently to talk to us. I want to talk to Brandon, who's calling in from Texas. Brandon, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi, Nate and Dan. Thank you guys for taking my call.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. What's going on?
I honestly just kind of called on an impulse. I just wanted to talk to two other atheists. Recently had have, I guess, lost my faith. It's kind of a progression, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly where it was lost, you know?
Okay. Yeah. No, I get that. It's hard once you're like looking back too, because I feel differently on how my journey was, looking retroactively than I did currently too. Like there's different phases and it's hard to figure out exactly where you're at one space or another. So I get it. Like it can time is weird.
Not everybody has a moment. For some people, it's just a very gradual thing, for sure.
Yeah. Or you go back and forth sometimes too. That happens. So, but I hear you, Brandon.
Yeah, I haven't gone back and forth, but it definitely has been a progression, and I haven't actually got a chance to talk to any out and open atheists. Most of the people I know are still pretty hard theists. I grew up pretty hardcore Southern Baptist.
Well, I hope you're able to find some more community where you're at. Just like, you are kind of breaking up with us a little bit. So if you can get to a spot where maybe your signal is a bit cleaner, that's going to help us talk to you a little bit today.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me know if it gets better. I'm actually in Austin.
Okay.
You're in Austin and you're looking for atheist community?
Yeah. There's this little organization. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called the Atheist Community of Austin.
Right now, I haven't got a chance to go to.
That's true. The building has been closed.
Yes,
that's true.
yes.
That's true. But when it gets open, man, you should definitely stop by.
Oh, yeah, I plan on it. But my main question is because as you go through this progression, as you slowly kind of, your faith becomes less and less, you start to look back at some of the things that you were taught from birth. And things that were so commonplace, such common phrases, start to become more and more horrific the farther you drift from, like, believing all of it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know if you guys had an opinion on, like, what they call it indoctrination, but do you think there's a difference between indoctrination and like straight up brainwashing?
Oh, what a good question. Good question. Nate, you want to tackle this one first?
That is a great question. It feels like it's almost a distinction without a difference. Indoctrination might apply to something that's more socially acceptable, whereas brainwashing might apply to something that we sort of frown upon. So you're kind of like asking the difference between the religion and a cult. It depends on which group you're a member of.
Yeah.
To a certain
like here's my take on it now, right, is if you look at a group of religious people who are pretty passive in their beliefs, but they worship the sun and believe the sun is a deity that can do things in the world. Some might call that brainwashing if you're talking about a little kid in a group like that. But like, I think it's kind of the same sort of process in a Christian church, honestly, in terms of the level of realism of beliefs there. The difference is, Christianity is just the more socially accepted like religion there. It's the more socially accepted idea that can kind of like contradict what we find in reality sometimes. Now, granted, in the US, you're seeing like varying opinions on what level of Christianity is acceptable. So like you'll see even other Christians, like I was mentioning earlier, dunk on people like Pentecostals because they are like way too into their faith. And it seems like the more appropriate Christian response is to like kind of believe some stuff, but not actually go far enough to like logically follow through with some of the conclusions that Christianity would bring. Right. So in one sense, I think it's a difference of semantics there. Like Nate is saying, one is just a more socially accepted way of talking about it. But yeah, like if you are convincing people at a young age or really at any point of vulnerability of ideas that are demonstrably false, you could call that indoctrination or you could call it brainwashing. To me, it's interchangeable. But, there might be religious scholars that would actually, probably have more of academic credentials than I would to talk about maybe a difference there. I wouldn't know. But yeah, in my opinion, it's kind of
I'm
it's pretty.
Of the specific.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
The specific phrase that is coming to mind is like we were taught. It's a mantra. They say it almost every sermon, at least where I went to church. Know that you know that you know. Every week, know that you know that you know. And that sounds innocent, especially if you're coming from a point where you believe all of this stuff. It sounds like they're wanting you to just make sure that you're saved so that there's no chance that you go to hell. And how could that be anything less them loving and helpful, and those intentions are honest.
Yeah.
But the farther I got from it, the more I started thinking, like, know that you know that you know. That messes with your head.
Right.
Because them saying that over and over again makes you think it keeps you in a place where you're never quite sure you know.
Yep.
You know?
It's a thought terminating cliche, if you've heard that phrase before.
And they do that, so that you'll keep going down to the altar and praying, and it's just there's not. Okay, this may not be 100% true, but I'm going to say it anyways. I don't think that there's that much to the Bible. Like, I feel like you're going and you're learning the same lessons from the same books week after week, and they have to do something to try to keep people engaged. Am I way off base there?
I mean, it's really going to depend on which Christian denomination you're talking about. Like Christianity has such a wide berth of different beliefs and different paradigms by which they interpret the Bible and use it to guide their lives. But I would say that, especially in evangelical circles, I would point out that the Bible is actually more or less used as a tool to justify cultural shifts, secular cultural shifts, rather than specifically biblical values. I think our most, shall we say, our last presidential election run was, largely Republican supported by evangelical churches. And why is that? Why does one church specifically fall in line with the values of a party? Well, because it's being influenced by a secular culture there, but it's using the lens of Christianity to justify, current secular shifts. So, like, again, I guess I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but there is a difference by which religion is used and is propagated in these circles. And there's different purposes to it. Some is just for life affirmation. Some is just to, live your best life and live to your full potential. And some is to maneuver towards political ends. And that's fucked up. And I'll always speak up against that. But yeah, like to just say, oh, well, Christianity is a cult or X is a cult, you lose a little bit of semantic fidelity there, I guess. So like, I think that's why you don't tend to see a lot of atheists like go that route, because it's an off-putting to a lot of people. And also you just want to make sure you're choosing your words carefully and which groups of people you're really talking about. Because words mean something to a lot of people. And if our goal is to try to convince people of the untruths of this stuff, we really got to be, as convincing as possible, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. You know what this conversation kind of reminds me of? I don't
that wasn't.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Nate.
It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever seen on social media those like church billboards that have this supposedly, reaffirming faith-based message, but it isn't really the message that they think it is. It's like, something like don't educate yourself out of a relationship with Jesus, or, let Jesus come inside you Sunday at 10 a.m. And it's like everybody else is just like, but they don't get the joke because they don't see it that way. And they are so indoctrinated, quote unquote, that they don't really see it for what it is. Like Dan was saying, it's really insidious.
Yeah.
That it's meant to teach you not to think and not to ask questions and not to think so hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's
definitely not to trust your own intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As I didn't. And that's why I'm on this show with my my lovely boss, Mr. ObjectivelyDan.
Boss, what are you talking about, Nate? You don't work for me.
You're my boss now. I work for you. Oh, you didn't know? I'll be there at 7, dude.
Okay.
Yeah,
wait a minute. I didn't agree to this. This isn't good. I don't like where this is going. Anyway, Brandon, I think we kind of answered your question there, but did you have anything else you wanted to say to that?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to call in real quick and ask that. Thank you guys for taking the time.
No problem, Brandon. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks.
It is an interesting point of discussion where how far can we take that term brainwashing when we're describing the practices of people? Because I think like a lot of QAnon folks are being brainwashed by, fringe outlets and right-wing media outlets. But like, I wouldn't say that the techniques and the method of communication there is the same as what happens in like a Pentecostal church, for example. Like, even though, you know, there's some similar outcomes, there's definitely a difference in methodology there. So that brainwashing term is so wide that, again, you just had to be really specific when talking about these things.
Yeah, one thing that kind of occurred to me too is that I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it strikes me that indoctrination, there are more rules involved, whereas like brainwashing, it could just be into one specific belief or one little segment, whereas indoctrination seems more encompassing. So it would more apply to religion because there's an entire dogma, right? There's an entire theology around it. There's an entire industry devoted to trying to make it make sense. So that, I think, for me in my head, I don't know if you feel the same way, but for me, that's the distinction, I think.
Yeah, you can find, I think it's quite common in the testimonies of people who have joined self-admitted cults that they don't fully buy the theology, usually, most of the time, of the groups that they're a part of. Usually they accept some smaller values, or they're accepting some sort of activity that the group is doing they find to be acceptable in some way, and the full acceptance of what those doctrines are part of, like that comes to it later. So like going back to QAnon, right? You may think that some of the stuff with like, JFK Jr. actually still being alive or something, that you may not accept that as real at first, but you may think that the election was actually a fraud. And maybe you think like, yeah, there's definitely some suspicious stuff happening in mainstream media. So you can buy into some of those smaller claims and eventually get to the bigger ones once you meet people in those groups who act as authority figures and tell you, okay, well, this is what's really going on, right? Same things kind of happen in a lot of religious groups too.
That's the insidious nature of them, is that they teach you that it's okay to not have good reasons for thinking what you think. Right. They reinforce that, hey, you know, it's okay to be told what to think by an authority figure, and you don't actually have to think critically about it. Nah, there's no need to be skeptical. Yeah. You know, this guy's on Fox News. Of course he isn't lying. He's Tucker Carlson. Come on. The guy's on the up $50 million a year. The guy's the heir to the Swanson TV dinner. Come on. He ain't gonna lie to you.
Right. Yeah.
Give
there's definitely taking advantage. Definitely taking advantage of public image there for sure.
Yeah, I kind of went to mobster there at the end.
Yeah, I don't know where you were going with that. I don't know what.
I was kind of trying to do like, it'd be a shame if someone came in here and burned your store down.
Shame. Anyway,
Paulie here, he's flicking his zippo.
All right, we got to get to some other callers.
Okay. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm sorry. It's my first time.
It's all good. I want to talk to Vincent from England, who called in earlier here. Vincent, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi guys. Hi Dan. Hi Nate. Dan, you might remember me from a couple of weeks ago. I spoke about faith healing in the UK.
Yes.
And something I've been thinking about since then as well. When I was younger, I had a book called 101 Science Experiments that you can do at home, and everything you can get at home, you can do these science experiments. Tells you about how it's done, why it works, and even in school, like in science classrooms, we did experiments like the water cycle and bits and pieces like that. And like, it's always funny when I hear a theist call in and say, explain your science books, show me that the science books work. And I'm like, well, I've got 101 experiments that I can show you that proves science works. How can these people dismiss science when they've probably done science at school?
Yeah.
Not so much the home science, but at least, like I said, we did a experiment in the classroom with the water cycle. So it's just like, I'm so confused when they say explain it. Do they actually want
Yeah, I think here's the reason I think for that, Vincent. I think for one, they don't accept necessarily everything what you're talking about as science. They might accept some of what you're talking about as just common sense, right? Or something that's just so unbelievably deniable that it's not even up for a debate. Most Christians I would talk to, right, I don't think would deny the water cycle, but for some reason, other kinds of sciences like the geologic dating of the Earth or evolution, things like that, that becomes more questionable because it's a more direct attack, I guess you could say, on some deeply held beliefs there, and it becomes politicized. And there's a history of that in the United States specifically. There's people my age and older who have now grown up in this system of people questioning this in even the public school systems. There are so many public schools in this country where people are teaching evolution and they will straight up say, yeah, I don't believe in any of this, but I'm required by state law or law to just, to teach this for you anyway. And that culture of denial is still so present, at least in my part of the world, that it almost becomes like it's like that kind of science is somehow a separate, almost political science that doesn't actually count because for some reason these people have a specific agenda in mind, whereas people who are studying, I don't know, the water cycle or other kinds of just more accepted sciences don't. So it is kind of a weird cognitive dissonance there that people don't solve. But yeah, I mean, it is truly at the end of the day because it's in direct response to some people's beliefs. I think you can find examples of that in other kinds of religious traditions too. Like in Islam, there's a lot of talk about what's up with like you can't keep dogs around. Usually, a lot of Muslim people don't have dogs, and this isn't everybody. This is within particular Muslim sects because there is a verse that says that dogs are unclean, and they'll try to use science to prove this as well. They'll talk about what science has shown about dogs and what it can do for people, and like it's weird how it can go both ways, but there is like some kind of political agendas to some sciences and not to others, which is weird, but it's especially prevalent here in the US because of the history of just evangelicals trying to fight that on a Supreme Court level.
I think a part of it too is a misunderstanding of what science is. Like they kind of look at it as this monolithic body of knowledge that thou must not contradict. Yeah, and it's not really that. It's a method, right? It's a process for finding out what's true and what isn't. Like science can make predictions. Religion can't really make predictions. Like the only real one that I can think of is from Ezekiel, when they predicted that the city of Tyre would be destroyed, and then it totally wasn't, right? But science can make predictions. Religion can't do that. And the only thing that makes science better is more science, right? Religion doesn't get better with more religion. In fact, I think as the fundamentalists in the United States would demonstrate, they can only make it worse.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
Yeah. And even down to things like... obviously with what's been going on lately, the amount of scientists that say don't open up yet, it will just spread again too quickly. And they go, oh, we're not going to listen to you, people need to get back out there. And then suddenly, oh dear, we're back into another.
Yeah, or like, well, one of you was wrong last year, so now everybody, now we're not going to listen to science at all.
The vaccine hesitancy is especially frustrating, if only because most people who are vaccine hesitant have probably already have vaccines for like chickenpox and other stuff that they got when they were kids. And suddenly now it's just this new one that has some, I don't know, suspicion attached to it. It's very, very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. But that's another example, I think, of, oh, well, because this political party is really all for it, then I have to be skeptical of this, and I think there's a couple of different examples you can point to that besides just the vaccine stuff. But yeah, it is tearing our society apart. And I don't know what to do about it except talk on call-in shows once a week. I'm trying to do my part, but man, it's hard. And it seems like we've been losing that battle so far. Most people are not vaccinated yet, despite being in a country where you can get it for free. I mean, that's what's most frustrating. But anyway.
What, free healthcare? I wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah, I know. It's sad.
Yeah, I got my dad for free, so I'm quite happy.
Yeah, there are so many people out in this world who would pay large sums of money to get this vaccine, and I don't know. People I know too who are smart. I know people with master's degrees who are vaccine hesitant because they just have I don't know. I think it's a political opinion at the end of the day that I don't know. I don't know how to break that. I'm trying, but I don't know how to break that. Anyway,
I don't
Vincent,
get it either, Dan.
So thanks for that call. But yeah,
hopefully more conversations like this help it.
I hope so too, Vincent. I hope so too. But I guess I keep going back to this idea that having personal one-on-one conversations is going to be way better than even just having video content out there for people, because ultimately our algorithms now and on every single platform we go to are going to be geared towards what you agree with already. And so, just doing that live one-on-one kind of conversation, I think is going to be super helpful for changing people's minds if that's what we're interested in doing. But big scientific topics can oftentimes, require a lot of knowledge on individual subjects, and all of us can't be experts on everything either. So it really comes down to the person and also their ability to talk to people. If you don't have good social skills, you might even be doing more harm than good in that. So yeah, there's no one reliable method, unfortunately, one unbroken method to do this kind of thing.
Fortunately, those who are vaccine hesitant are seldom well informed.
Yeah, it's true.
About you may have a master's degree, but is it in epidemiology?
Yeah. Well,
what?
You don't have to be educated in anything to have a deeply held belief. So
true. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a guy at work who's vaccine hesitant the other day, and his argument was, well, if I catch the disease, I'm only killing myself. Well, what's your problem? I'm like, well, you don't understand. You're making it more dangerous for everybody else too, because other variants can pass through you and you can infect other people, right? It's not just about you. Like, wouldn't you feel pretty terrible if you killed your grandma?
Yeah.
Of course you would, man. It's not just you.
But Nate, come on, it's not real, man. It's not real.
I'm reminded of that scene from Seinfeld where George is like, we're living in a society here.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, we're all trying to get along, man. I know. I'm sorry.
Well, Vincent, that's about all the time we got for this call. But thank you for calling in on that topic, and appreciate you calling all the way from England. Also, by the way, Oliver from last week, who also called in from England, guys, in case you were watching, who did that awesome rap, did end up sending me the lyrics to that. So thank you, Oliver, for doing that rap. And they posted a remixed version of that rap song on the Truth Wanted Facebook fan page. So you guys should check that out if you have not yet already. It's awesome. Nate, have you heard this rap? Oh, it's so good.
No, I watched the show, but I haven't heard the rap.
We got the original Truth Wanted rap last week, and it's my favorite thing ever. It's so good.
Wow.
So go check that out. That's a quick plug for the Facebook there. But we should get to some more callers here, because we got I said Tim because our next person I want to talk to is named Tim. Tim's calling in from Washington here. Tim, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, Dan, it's been a while since I called you guys. How you doing?
It has been a while. What's going on? Long time returning caller, Tim. Tim, you've been calling this show for quite a while now. I guess over a year now. More than that. You're one of my long-time callers, Tim. What's going on?
Not a whole lot. I'm just living up in the Seattle area and enjoying being back in my old stomping grounds and going up to the gay ghetto in Seattle and enjoying all that. Just found a job.
How are the fires,
so
Tim?
I'm gonna.
You guys getting smoked out down there too? I'm in BC.
Actually, not getting smoked out right now, but we were in. I was in Spokane area with my brothers and sister last weekend, and it was a little hazy. It wasn't really smoked out, but it was hazy.
Cool. What do you want to talk about today?
First of all, really wanted to thank the first caller. I mean, Mark was awesome. He was awesome to listen to, and being one who came out of conversion therapy and all of that, I related to his story and actually wished that my story was much more like his, where it's like, no, you're not going to get me into conversion therapy. But second of all, Nate, you talked about glossolalia. And as a former fundamentalist Pentecostal, of course, I was a tongue-speaking, slain in the spirit kind of guy.
Sure.
Years after my deconversion, I was a part of a theater group. And we actually used gibberish as a acting exercise. Where we were not supposed to say it. Yeah, we were not supposed to say any words. We were just to convey feelings to our partner using nothing but gibberish. And I realized, oh my God, that's exactly what I did every single Sunday, every single Wednesday, even in my prayer closet. You know about the prayer closet. It's exactly what I did. I just spoke gibberish for nothing. I didn't know what I was. Maybe I might have been conveying a feeling, but certainly I wasn't doing anything more than the mass hysteria and the ASMR of the church service. But when you do it as an exercise in theater, it is. It brings it right down to what the real fact is that it's all about conveying your feelings. It's all about conveying your emotions. One partner and I that I had, we were laughing as hard as, I don't know if you remember seeing Kenneth Copeland and another preacher doing a tongues back and forth. There's a video of them and they're all laughing. And you do the same thing. We did the very same thing. We were having a hoot, just enjoying this. It's nothing but an exercise in theater.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it just goes to show that we can communicate so much with our volume, with our rhythm, with our meter, with our body language. Like I can go, and you know what I'm saying is angry, right? But by the same token, people have actually analyzed the things that people say when they're speaking in tongues. And it is not any language. Like language has certain patterns that repeat. You know, the vowels E is the most common. There are certain diphthongs and sounds that repeat. There are certain parts of our phonetic, you know, the way that we speak that repeat in certain intervals. And none of that is found when you're speaking in tongues. But we can absolutely communicate, just like with that exercise you were saying, Tim. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Well, for some reason, this conversation is reminding me there is a video of this black gospel choir singing in Japan, and they're singing the theme song to the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it's a really, really cool video, but they're all singing in Japanese, and I was just thinking, like, you know, like, that's a really cool thing that I think is awesome and makes me feel something. And I have no idea what they're saying. They're literally speaking a language that I can't understand, but there is like something powerful to that, because I guess human beings just like the sound of other human beings, like, I don't know, doing something in a performance there. But yeah, I get that. Like there is something, especially when people are doing it together too, in just a group state, there's almost like a trance going on. I have never really participated in glossolalia, but I've seen other people do it, and seeing that it's, I don't know, it's almost like there's a difference in the air or something. I know really that's just the mind kind of coming up with that, but I can see how that can be convincing for people who don't understand, like, oh, like there's actually,
it really is.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tim.
It really is all about the passion. When you've got the passion behind it, I mean, one of my all-time favorite songs, and I even sing it sometimes just for my friends, is the Swahili version of All Creatures of Our God and King, done by First Call. I don't know if either one of you are old enough to remember that.
Give me a couple lines, Tim.
That was back in the 80s.
Give me a couple lines.
We'll get copyright strike from Tim's great voice.
Sorry.
He's going to be too accurate.
Yeah, you probably don't want me to do that. But basically, First Call did actually, I am a singer, but you probably don't want a copyright strike because of it. So I won't do it. But it's in Swahili, and I have sang it for friends, even those who speak Swahili, and they love it. But I will tell you, the first time I ever heard this song, and the first few words of it came out, I did not understand it, but the passion behind it is what got me. It's the passion behind our words. It's the passion behind the utterings. I mean, if you talk to someone from Germany, you will find the passion in what they're saying. You may not quite understand what they're saying, but you understand they're either happy or they're angry or they're sad, and that type of thing. So it's all about really showing the passion, right?
Yeah,
and that's what glossolalia.
That's exactly what I said. Yeah, absolutely, totally agree.
Yeah, Tim, this is the reason why there's the stereotype of like the 80s televangelist, and like that's an impression that people can do because there's something like that's allegedly powerful about the way these people talk, because they sound like they're saying something really, really important, especially when it's like when they're giving this call to action for you to do something too, when they're telling you to give your life to the Lord and make sure you're making a donation to the church and stuff, right? Like there is something to that, and there's a reason why they're as popular as they are, and it's in that performance there. And when you figure out, you can do that for a lot of things, not just like religious stuff, it kind of falls apart. But
Nate,
yes, sir.
And Nate, have you ever heard the parody of "Untie My Bow Tie, Who Stole My Honda"? Anytime someone talks about speaking in tongues.
Say that again.
My Honda, that type of thing.
Who stole my Honda?
Bow tie, who stole my Honda? If you say it fast enough, it sounds like just about every old lady in every fundamentalist Pentecostal church you've ever been to.
You just blew my mind, Tim.
I have to look that up. Is that on like Urban Dictionary? Can I like find that phrase? It should be. You should write the article for it, Tim.
Actually, Carmen, the Christian singer Carmen, does a song where that line is actually in. Untie my bow tie, who stole my Honda stuff. It's
really?
Line.
Shut the front door.
Says, yeah.
Wow.
Look up Carmen. And he's a fabulous, he was one of my favorite singers in the 80s. And he did some great comedic and stirring songs back in the 80s.
That's funny.
For
I didn't think
those
we'd
of
talk
us
about
who were Christians and thought that.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, I never thought we'd be talking about Carbon on this show. That's so funny. But that's really interesting. But hey, Tim, we want to get to one more caller here before we wrap up tonight's social. We're gonna let you go, but thanks again for calling in, Tim, and being a wonderful return caller for Truth Wanted. Tim is really, really cool. You should definitely check out older episodes with Tim in them if you haven't already. Awesome caller. But last call of the night, we're gonna get to Mark from Oregon. Is this the same Mark from Oregon that called in before, or is this a different Mark from Oregon?
No, this is a different Mark.
Oh, wow. 2 Marks from Oregon tonight. That's interesting. What a coinky dink.
I see. Are you there?
Yeah, we're here. Mark, what's up?
Hello, guys. Okay. Oh, sorry. Technical difficulties here. Thank you for taking my call, boys. I'm a longtime atheist, and I also believe in ETs, and it's something I've been kind of quiet about talking about with other atheists because, one thing doesn't go with the other.
I mean,
it can.
It can.
You would wait until 10 minutes before the end of the show to call in with this, wouldn't you?
Well, to be fair, he was in the lines for a little bit here.
Okay.
We're just now picking him now, but
a little bit. You know, especially because now that the new UFO footage from the Air Force has come out, and you know, there's more and more visual evidence that there is something actually in our skies that we can't explain.
Yeah.
And for years, I've had experiences with those objects. They would appear around me, and sometimes I felt that there was a telepathic communication going on.
Ooh.
Where they would tell me, I don't know, just various things, who they are, they're here, come and look at me, type of things, you know, step outside. And so it's been occurring since probably the early 90s that this has been happening to me and to my family.
And your family? Your family's had telepathic experiences too?
Well, they've had more visual experiences. I don't know if they have had telepathic experiences. I have shown objects in the sky to friends, to family, and I'm not just talking about high flyers that look like a satellite. I'm talking about actual, you know, a ship, I'm calling it, that was above me that was so massive, I felt like I could stand up my car and touch it, and it was so big that I really couldn't see the entirety of it as it flew over me. And I've had other times where I've had like orbs. I would call them like they would be almost like drones that flew around at kind of high speed, and I would always be drawn to those objects. I could usually see them and spot them and point them out to other people if they were around.
When you say you showed them to people, like, did you take pictures of them and show them to them, or were you just like, "Hey, come on out here, you got to check this thing out"?
Yes, I've actually had people, my neighbors. I used to live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and that's where my experiences started in that state. And my particular neighbors where I lived in Albuquerque, on both sides of me, at one time or another, I had them out in the front yard as a set of glasses, binoculars, looking at objects in the sky, and my neighbors never talked to me about it ever again. They just handed his glasses back to me and walked away.
If you're gonna see shit in the sky, it'd probably be in New Mexico. You know, they're testing all kinds of stuff out there. You know, they got Area 51 and all that. So you know, I could see that happening.
I understand that. I understand that. I lived in Albuquerque, and I lived on the west side of the city, and so they call it the West Mesa. It's a river valley, so we're up kind of high. On the east side of Albuquerque is an Air Force base. It used to be, it's called Kirtland Air Force Base. It also has Sandia Labs there. And back in the day when they were developing the bomb, this is one of the locations that it was the high, you know, security area where this bomb would be transferred around the United States. So there are bunkers, and there are things on the east side of Albuquerque, the base of the mountains, that you can see from the west side with high-powered glasses, planes flying in and out of bunkers. They don't even stop. I've seen ships fly over the Rio Grande River Valley at night, no lights, no nothing, go into these bunkers. And usually you can see that on when it's a bright moonlight. Of course, if it's black, you can't see anything.
Yeah, I mean,
so I do.
To me, that just sounds like an example of military testing. I don't know how that would have to be extraterrestrial necessarily in nature.
I want to ask you too, Mark.
well,
like you say that you've been seeing these phenomena since the 90s, right? So you must sort of expect it or anticipate it. Like, how much actual data have you collected? Have you got pictures? Have you got video? And if not, why not?
I've attempted to take pictures of it, but I can't get my camera to take a photograph. Now, I don't know if you guys are old enough, but back in the 90s, when you'd have your film developed, they would give you an index card with like tiny little thumbprints on there of all the photos. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, I'm 41.
Anyway.
I remember.
Okay, so I would take pictures of these things, of these objects in the sky, and my index card would show me a blank space on that photo reel. And so I could take a picture of the object in the sky, take a second picture of a plane in the sky, take a third picture of the UFO that came back, and both pictures on either side of the plane are blank on the film. So that was one reason I couldn't take pictures of it with a camera. I tried using a video player one time. My sister had a high quality camera, and one night there was a triangle ship over Albuquerque I saw. So I drove to her house. She lived near me. Got the camera. We point the camera. We hooked it all up to the monitor. We point the camera at the object in the sky, and the overexposure light on the camera would turn on, and we'd lose the picture on the screen. And so I'd move the camera, the picture would come back, but then I'd put the camera back on the object, and the picture would blank out. And so that's my experiences many, many times with objects when they were close enough to take a picture.
So you think it's deliberate sabotage?
Yes, I do. I think that these things, these entities are able to perceive the environment around them, and they can do something. I can't explain the technology. I'm just guessing. They do something to prevent their image from being captured on video.
So does that mean that every image that we have of UFOs currently isn't real? Because otherwise they would be blocking it out?
That's what I was going to ask. Like, why would they block the average person from catching footage, but then allow the U.S. Navy to get it?
Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
do you have any thought? I'm not trying to make fun of you, Mark. I'm just honestly asking a question.
Oh, I understand that. And, I can't explain why or what for that they do this to me. But I have seen photos of UFOs that I have personally seen in the sky, and they're photos that I have never seen before. Okay? So I don't want to sound like a total wacko, but since the early 90s, I have seen hundreds of objects in the sky that are not planes, they're not helicopters. I've seen missiles fired from White Sands to Utah in the sky. I've seen the space station flying across the sky. I've seen a lot of things, and the objects I'm talking about don't ever match basic aerodynamic qualities that we're used to in aircraft. And I'm not saying I'm a professional, but what I do know is that I've identified things that I have never seen before. And I've seen U.S. Air Force jets chasing these objects before. And I like I said, I don't want to sound like the complete wacko, but I moved to Oregon. I left Albuquerque in 2001, moved to Oregon, and lo and behold, I had sightings here as well. And so one place I want to turn you guys on to is, I don't know if you ever heard of it, but there's a ranch in Washington close to Mount Adams. It's called ESETI. And my friend James Gilliland has this ranch. And you can go up there and see objects flying in and around that mountain. And it's you can't explain it. You can look at that place in the daytime. There are no roads. It's a huge volcanic mountain, and you can see objects. And this is one place where anybody can go and see something that you
Mark
to say, I don't know what that was, man.
Mark, can I ask you a favor? Can you call in the next time I'm on Truth Wanted and maybe get in the queue a little earlier, please?
Or start posting some of the stuff on the Truth Wanted fan group so everybody else can see some of this stuff too. Because you know
what they say, right? Like, Pixar, it didn't happen, Mark.
No, that's totally true. Yeah. I'll say this much, Mark, because it's hard for me to talk about anecdote on this show and speculate, right? For me personally, people seeing objects in the sky is not enough for me to be convinced of the extraterrestrial at this point, because there's just so much ambiguity when it comes to the evidence for these kinds of claims. At this point, it would have to be some sort of personal contact that's verifiable in some way, because I like everybody has seen objects in the sky that they can't explain at some point in their life or another, whether they're actively looking for it or not. So it's just not enough for me personally. Now, I haven't been to this ranch and I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, if there's extraterrestrials, I'm and maybe this is too high of a standard for me as a skeptic to have, but like I'd have to see some real evidence of actual contact and not just like stuff that you see, you know. But that's what it would personally take for me.
I understand that, and I'm just telling you about the visual contact that I've had with these ETs. My life has been filled with personal contact that I can't prove. It's been filled with other sightings and situations that I can't prove that makes me believe that there is something different out there. Now, I know you can question whatever's in the sky. I talked to you about my friend James. He actually has a website. It's called eseti.org. Go to the website, check it out, and I can for a fact say that I saw things at that ranch that just, boggle the mind. And
well, Mark, if it's happened before, it's bound to happen again. So keep your cell phone ready, buddy, and post it to our Truth Wanted fan page. I want to see this.
We'll talk.
I want to see it.
We can have some more conversations on there. But Mark, unfortunately, we are at the end of the time we got left for this show here. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go. But thank you for calling in and telling us about your experiences. That's fun. Oh. That's cool.
Dan, I didn't even tell you this. I actually saw a UFO once myself. I've encountered aliens myself. I was camping and just wandered into the forest, into a clearing, and there was these people standing around. They're wearing really weird clothes, strange music, and I was like, "This." I thought it was a UFO, but it turned out I had just wandered into a Bjork concert.
Wow, a Bjork joke. A Bjork joke. That's a first for this show. My goodness. We don't talk about Bjork enough on here. That's great. Well, Nate, I'm glad. Did you enjoy the concert at least? Did you get there? Did you get kicked out?
A little bit. I wasn't high enough, so they told me I had to go take some more mushrooms and come back. But
okay, that makes sense. I could see that happening. Well, yeah, I don't want to belittle anybody's personal experiences to what they believe are contact with something from beyond or whatever, but I do want to see it. I want to see it, and I want to have frank discussions about it too. And eliminate any possibilities towards other explanations being the cause there. So anybody that has that kind of stuff, post it on the fan group there, because again, there's only so much we can do on a call-in show to really talk about those kinds of experiences. But Nate, like I said, we got to wrap up this episode here. This is normally where I say, where can people find you at? But they can find you right here as part of the AEN podcast network, right?
Yes, they can. Yeah. I am a host of Secular Sexuality. I've recently been added to the rotation for the nonprofits. I've now made the hat trick with the Truth Wanted. And maybe someday in the distant future, I'll get on one of the Sunday shows. Who knows? Probably not. But, hope springs eternal. But check us out, tiny.cc/AEN podcast, folks.
Yes, definitely check it out. Nate, thanks so much for being on the Friday night show. And folks, thank you guys, everybody watching the show, for checking in on this live show. If you're not listening to this live, you might be listening to this on YouTube or iTunes, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. So check it out on there and leave us a like, a comment, or a positive review, or a negative one if you want to be honest. That's all right. I like honesty. But no, a positive. Actually, just say positive. I don't know if my producers would want me to say you should leave a negative review, so I'm just going to say positive. But that being said, definitely check us out.
Let's go with honest, since this is
I want the truth. This is Truth Wanted. No, I want the truth. That's right. I'm going to stick with that. We'll stick with that as the line there. But anyway, there's a couple of different ways you can support the show if you haven't already. One is through our merchandise. And so we have a new link for that. It's bit.ly/AEN merch. I think, did we get that changed? I think that was changed, right? Either way, it's in the bottom of the third there, so I'm going to assume that's right. If not, it's going to be in the description to the show, because nobody types in stuff based on what they audibly hear, right? They want to click on stuff. I think that's for most people. Another way to support the show is through joining our membership. You can do that by hitting that little join button there. You hit cool little emoticons and stuff. So check that out if you haven't already. There's ones with my little face on it, and it's pretty cool.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know.
I need more Dan in my life.
Right. I was going to say that's true for everybody, but I don't think that's actually true. I think some people have a sustainable amount of Dan, and I'm a limited resource. So you have to use me very carefully.
Oh boy.
Besides that, you can also check out the Truth Wanted fan group on Facebook. It's cool. It's popping. It's got lots of people talking about the truth or what they want from it. Anyway, And you can also usually check us out on the after show for Discord. We're not going to go tonight. Nate's got some stuff he's got to do, and I got some stuff I got to do. So this is one of the rare times we're not going to go on the after show. But if you join in live, you usually can check out the after show. And of course, this show is on the AEN Podcast Network, so you can check out the other shows there. And also, you can contact the show. It's truth@atheist-community.org, and follow me on Twitter @ObjectivelyDan. But last but never, ever least, I have to thank the wonderful, fantastic, spectacular, stupendous, amazing, fantastical crew that helps make this show happen every single week. Look at the crew. That's a crew cam over there. All those great people help make this show happen every single week. This show is mostly run by volunteers like me and Nate. So those guys are awesome and help putting this thing happen putting this thing together every single week. My goodness, my words are just bad today, Nate.
That's okay. That's okay. At least you had me on here with you. I had a really good time, and I love this show. So this has been awesome, Dave. Oh, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, folks. I am not going to be on the show next week. Next week should be Puck hosting, but I will be on Talk Heathen next week for that. And Gail Jordan is supposed to be joining me for that. So look forward to that. Otherwise, Nate, do you have any words of wisdom you want to shout out before we wrap up tonight's broadcast?
Picks or it didn't happen.
Picks or it didn't happen. I agree with that philosophy.
There's 4 billion cell phones out there, folks. So, you know, hit me up with some pictures. I want to believe.
Picks or it didn't happen. I like it. Folks, thanks for watching Truth Wanted. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.